I'm Van Sebastian, here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge, Season 9, Episode 34 interview. We'll be talking with Mo Fanning and discussing his novel, Husbands. Let's get to know our guest. Mo Fanning is a part-time novelist, part-time stand-up comic, and full-time aging homosexual. He currently lives in the black country backwater town of Stourbridge, but aspires to something more rural without neighbors. With a unique talent for blending romance and comedy in intriguing settings, Mo is an emerging voice in the contemporary fiction scene and aims to be the best-known writer of LGBTQ romance. Mo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Can I just ask, how do you become a part-time aging homosexual? I want to sign up for that because, girl, my back hurts 9% of the time.
I'm going to say a lot of it has to do with very good filters. And the rest of it just comes down to just sleeping way more than anybody needs to sleep.
Which means you're probably getting the appropriate amount of sleep because nobody else is getting enough ever.
Yeah, no, I'm fine because I work from home, so I pretty much I can lie about when I'm at work.
Yeah, right. Bravo.
So, as a comic and novelist, you're obviously a storyteller, but writing a book is way more work than just telling the story. So, what was the passion to actually put novel out into the world?
I think it came way back. I mean, when I was younger, when I was in my teens, in my 20s, I think I tried to write a book and I seem to remember it becoming really involved. And I think at one point there was a triad plot to murder a supermodel, and it's probably best you don't write this book. And then years later, I was reading not Mo Fanning, I'm Mo Fanning. I was reading thank you, you can cut that. I was reading Marion Key.
No, I'm not.
No, you won't. I was reading Marion Key's Watermelon, and it was one of those books that you suddenly thought, I really like this now. I wish I could write a book like this. And I figured I was going to try. And so I did write a book that was very much like a Marion Key's tribute act, which was my first novel, The Armchair Bride. And that was really the kickoff point for me. As soon as I worked out, you know what you need to do when you write a book? Write something you want to read. And that was it.
Yep. Well, that brings us to the novel Husbands today.
Yeah.
Dun, dun. So if I were to see it sitting on a table at like a Pride event or a book fair, what would you tell me about it? What would be your elevator pitch?
I would say it is a book about the darker side of Hollywood. And it's a book about somebody who is incredibly stupid, but incredibly lovable at the same time, but who finds himself dragged into that darker side of Hollywood.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. So what are the main characters? What's the darkness? Let's dive into it.
The main character is a Birmingham, which is not far from where I live now, Birmingham, UK supply teacher working in a primary school. I was that supply teacher working in a primary school many years ago. And he is a bit part actor. He does the background roles in an awful lot of things, but wants to be much bigger. And then he gets a phone call just saying, hi, and it's from LA. It's from an agent working for a very important director that he has heard of, saying, you remember that Vegas fake wedding thing that you were on? Wasn't fake. You are married. And he's in a coma. You need to come over. Being stupid, he believes all of that and just thinks, well, this is my chance for a great big break. And so off he flies. And things kind of take a bit of a dark turn from then on in. There's a lot of dark underbelly of Hollywood explored. And a lot of that came from originally I read an article, it's quite widely available, with an actor who had detailed an abusive relationship he'd had with quite a well-known director. And just by chance, I just thought, this guy's on socials. I'm going to DM him. I'm going to do the really creepy thing and just send him a message, fully expecting I'd be completely ignored because, who replies to those? And yeah, he came back to me. We talked. He then put me in touch with 3 or 4 other people, and we all met. We spoke one by one. I flew out to LA. I met these people. It was all very much off the record. It's all very much, I don't want to be recognized by this.
Right.
And they told me stories that were not great stories, but they informed the narrative beat that is behind Husbands. And then I suppose the hardest part for me was trying to make this not quite as gloomy and horrible as the real life version was, but still do justice to their story. So it was very much once I'd finished it, it was like, okay, I'm going to send this copy off to these people and say, is this okay? Have I trivialized it? Have I said too much? Have I not said enough? And thankfully, I had a few suggestions back, but thankfully, most of it was positively received. So hopefully, I've done them okay with the story.
Nice. So I know you are also a comedian. How did you work comedy into that darkness?
It's the whole gallows humor thing, and that is kind of seen through so many things that I've written. There's such a very tiny thin line between a really terrible thing and a really funny thing, and that's kind of why if ever you go to funerals, and when you get to my age, you go to a lot. People always find the funniest thing there. They will always, if a young child just calls out, "Where's grandfather?" It's like, and they just, he's in the box. Please, can you not draw attention? It's the humor lies within that. There's always a darkness informing every bit of humor. I think a lot of comedy comes from that sort of inner sadness, the inside clown that kind of wants to try and make people laugh at just how bad things can be. And so, that's kind of how I work the comedy into it, because I think it's just comedy always lies in darkness.
I mean, and isn't like gallows humor like part of the ethos of the Brits anyway? So it's kind of
we
like
it a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, I think it runs in your veins.
It kind of runs in our veins, and we'd like it to run in yours as well, but you are hopefully not going to
we're too cheerful out here.
All right. Well, a couple more questions about the novel, then we'll hit some broader topics. Does your teacher find a way through that darkness?
He does. A lot of the book is, I mean, we start out in LA, we start out in Hollywood, we start out in the Beverly Hills Hotel, which I had one very small cup of coffee in, and kind of my bank balance is still quite unhappy. Then it goes on a road trip throughout the whole of the North and across down as far as Georgia, across America. And that is where another husband comes into play. There are 3 husbands. There is this husband who didn't know he was a husband. There is a former husband who may or may not still be married to him. I'm not going to tell you because that's kind of a plot spoiler. And then there is the super handsome Hollywood hunk who is engaged to the man in the coma. It's kind of sounding complex now, but it really isn't on the page.
Okay.
So he does find likeness. He does find happiness in the end, because it's a bit of a dark rom-com, so there has to be a happy ever after.
Mm-hmm.
But how he gets there is not how you might expect. It is quite a round trip.
Okay. When you set out to write the book, did you intend to foster change and like raise awareness, or did that just sort of come as you were writing?
Yeah, it kind of came. I mean, the subject was something that I thought as I say, it's a dark subject, and I thought, I don't even know if there is really a story here, or if it's just too icky to, it's just like, I can't do this justice. Somebody else could do it justice. I can't. But that was kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to expose, because there'd been the whole Me Too movement had really gone on, and at the same time I was thinking, I'm sure this happens to gay men as well. I'm just certain, because it just has to.
Even straight men have gone through it,
and straight men, and it just happens. And it was that was the kind of story I wanted to dig into. And this was the first time I've actually made my main character a gay character. There's always been gay characters in my novels. The novel before was set on a gay cruise, even though the two main characters were straight. And I wanted to try and bring the gay characters forward. And that is now something that will continue. Like my next book, one of the main characters is gay again. But yeah, it was that whole wanting to tell that Me Too story and just throw a different light on it.
Right.
Plus, I think it's, you have, it's horrible that women go through it as much as they do. But I think for men, there's a different level of difficulty because there's people think it's absurd that men can say they suffered from it.
Yeah.
And so men feel even more penned in that they can't talk about it, or even go to great lengths not to acknowledge that it's happening or happened.
Yeah, totally
and which is why you have, male suicides at older ages, because they're not able to express. They don't have permission by society to express it. So you writing this book is actually a really good way of fostering that kind of conversation,
Yeah, you're right entirely. I mean, the suicide statistics amongst younger and middle-aged and even older gay men, there is an element of shame. There's a whole, oh, well, if you're gay, you fancy every man. And it's just like, that trust me, that's not true.
Darling.
Yeah, it's just like, there always used to be this thing, oh, he's coming to the pub, he's going to try and sleep with every man. And just like, really, don't flatter yourself. That's
exactly.
I mean, in between,
that's where the Southern Belle in all of us comes out. We go, oh, yeah, bless your heart.
It's just like, no, far more picky than that. But yeah, it's that whole, there is certainly an element of, well, also, you're a man, he's a man, you're both strong, you're both manly, you could fight that off. And it's just like, really? I've met men who are a lot stronger than some men, and it doesn't matter, an aggressor.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly what I was saying. They're not given permission.
Yeah.
They're assumed, oh, you got your way out of it. They don't understand, or they think, like, especially with like straight men who are abused by the women in their lives, they think, oh, well, you should be able to take her on. Yeah, right. Yeah, and you could have enjoyed it. Come on, and I think that's really an important story to tell. So I really applaud you for doing this. It couldn't have been difficult, or it couldn't have been easy to try and lay this out and work through all of that stuff. But I think it's well worth writing, because people should pick it up just on that alone to really understand that this level of what's going on that is talked about even less.
Yeah, it is. And as you said before, it is very hard to try and think, how am I going to work in, I mean, it's not roundabout comedy, it is dark comedy, but how are you going to tell this? And the comedy is used because it makes something more.
It's a coping mechanism that we use. Yeah.
And it's just that if you are told, oh, there's a book here and it's all about abusive gay power, toxic relationships, you're going to think, okay, that sounds worthy, but I'll perhaps read it one day when I'm feeling a little bit more able for it. But using the comedy makes it more accessible. It's a very easily accessible story. I write in really easily accessible ways. So it was just like, I can put a serious message behind the really quite sweet frontage. So
I'm also awfully glad the conversation went towards men's emotions, because you had a talking point when you signed up that I'm very curious about. Why should real men read romance?
That's really true, because you see so many, well, you don't now, but in the old days, you used to see so many men who would be reading books on the tube, on a bus, and they would have a far more Kingsley Amis book in front of it. They would be hiding this, or they would be reading it in secret. And there has been more and more a movement towards it being okay to like romance. And I think also a lot of this comes down to a lot of streaming channels are now, your big male heroes are now starting to star and appear in more romantic films, more romantic comedy, and it's the whole culture has gone more towards men are allowed to feel something now. You know, you are
Right.
And I don't know whether or not the pandemic affected this, that people got kind of like, oh, it's okay, I can read it now, nobody can see me. And people just kind of seem to open up more to it. And now I feel like when I look at the stats for who are my readers, for my previous readers, they were always like 70% female, 30% male. And now it's gone more 60-40. And I'm aiming for more of a 50-50, but that's
Right.
not
Yeah.
happening.
Well,
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting to see how many more men are reading romance now.
Nice. All right. Well, in the interest of time, I will ask if there's anything more on those topics or on your novel Husbands that you want to mention that we didn't think to ask.
No, I think you've asked most of the things here. It's just it was an interesting book to write, and it has inspired what I'm writing next, kind of, in a way.
Ooh, we'll get to that in a moment.
yeah. Okay.
All right. Take it away.
All right. So, in this year of diving deeper, what one word describes your favorite writing snack or drink?
Now, I know you probably want me to say a cup of tea or a scone or something like that, but I'm going to be honest and say that I've really totally got into eating fresh fruit while I'm
Oh, good for you.
Yeah,
Nice.
and it's totally a health kick thing. But my one real warning sign for anybody who's going to do this: do not do it with raspberries, because they make your fingers very red, and then your keyboard it's kind of like a butcher's shop.
Right, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not, and it doesn't come out. It really
Although my
doesn't.
favorite meme is the white rabbit eating raspberries out of a bowl.
Yeah.
Just getting redder.
Yeah, that is my keyboard. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
fruit.
All right.
Fruit
Well,
is my one word.
okay, there you go. What books did you read growing up?
I was huge on completely dodgy now Enid Blyton, because this was way before we realized that she was writing quite anti-Semitic things.
Ooh.
And I was very much into that whole world of the faraway tree. And I hated the famous five, but I just thought they were pretenders. But I loved all of these kind of like really character-driven worlds away
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of different thing. And I hated when you in England, when you move on to your secondary school, your next school, you're always given this writing curriculum, and it always has to have a Shakespeare in, and it has to have a classic in, and it kind of makes you start to think of those kind of writers as like compulsory writers, and you start not really enjoying them. It's only when you get older that you kind of go, okay, now I've got freedom to pick. I might actually read those a bit more.
Right.
But yeah, growing up, it was kind of like anything that was kind of worlds and world building and things like that.
Okay, excellent. Well, who's been the biggest supporter of your writing?
Biggest supporter is my husband, because he puts up with a hell of a lot of shit from me. He puts up with me vanishing, and he will often hear me call down the stairs. It'll be, I'm just coming, I'll be 5 minutes and I'll be there. And he knows that means probably an hour. Maybe
he opens the fridge and goes, "Where's the fruit?"
It's just like all the fruit has gone, and now dinner's ruined.
I know what's happening.
You did this.
All right. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I am now very much a morning person. I used to be a night owl. I used to very much be a dedicated night owl. In my 20s and 30s, I lived in Amsterdam, and I never really thought I'd had a night out unless I was sat on somebody's front step watching the sun come up. That was kind of then, and then
Been
now
there.
all of a sudden, yeah, total opposite. I get really nervous if I'm not in bed by 10 o'clock at night. I was like, something's gone horribly wrong here. And I have been known to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night and turn off the light and go to sleep, and I don't care.
Girl, yes, last night I wanted a little power nap around 7:30 p.m. I woke up at 12:30. Like,
yeah, I go to bed, and my husband says, you do know people are just in the current world. Like when I was younger, you used to go out at 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the evening. That was like peak time. And then he said, you do know that people are now just thinking about getting dressed to go out at 10 o'clock at night. People don't go out till midnight.
oh yeah, yeah.
How can those animals live? That's not
How did we
nice.
live when we were doing
Yeah, I just like I'm so glad I'm not young now. I could not stay awake that time, not have a job.
All right. Well, what's your favorite hobby outside of writing?
I have many hobbies, which I have, most of which I'm very, very bad at. For a long time, I tried to make scented candles, and I'm going to tell you now, you can't do that. They don't work. Scented candles smell what the oils smell wonderful. The
Yeah.
candles smell wonderful. You light the candle, it smells like a candle. Otherwise, I guess other than that, I'm a really I'm so into cooking and trying to make good food out of really good ingredients, like spending way too much money on the ingredients because I've just seen it mentioned and it's a really obscure ingredient, and trying to make it taste like something, because it very rarely does when you've read about some bizarre mushroom that has cost you probably half a week's wages. But yeah, you're going to eat it. But yeah, cooking is my other hobby.
Okay. All right. All right. I will tell you that I did try the scented candle thing too. And no, but what I found was actually very good and so easy to do was making hand soaps, because you melt all that
That
stuff
would
down. And the nice part about it is all you have to do is rinse the pan because it's so.
Yeah, of course that would be, yeah. So candles, I mean, yeah, it was messy,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
end results were just. I'm people would lie. They would say, "Yes, thank you so much for that candle. It was lovely. It smelled so great." And I think, no, it didn't. You don't need to spare my feelings. I know it didn't.
All right. All right. Has writing and publishing novels changed the way you see yourself?
I don't know if it has. I don't think it has. I think I was already this messed up neurotic, so I don't think it could really change that. I think for most writers, when a book comes out, when somebody buys a book, when somebody reads a book, when somebody feeds back, it's that validation that I think everybody seeks anyway. I think we all just everything we do is a search for some sort of validation. So if anything, it's changed that. It's just like it's made me feel, yes, I can do something. So, but it
Yeah.
hasn't changed
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you were to write a spin-off about a side character in your novels, who would you choose?
I've tried so many times to write a spin-off from my very first novel. Um, the main character she covers, and then her sister comes home one day to find her husband sitting drinking tea with a lot of other men, all in dresses. Not a sexual thing. They sit, they knit, they dress. And I thought there's got to be a story in that somewhere, because it's got to be there. And I've tried so many times and I cannot get the story right. So I will do it one day. It will happen. But if it was husbands, I suppose, I'd like to try and write a spin-off of one of the really bad characters and what happens to them after, or even before. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of want to dig into the unusual bad characters rather than the likable
Well,
lovables.
yeah, and the fact that, because every villain thinks they're the hero. So,
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
there you go. All right. Well, now the question I'm dying to know, because of husbands that you have there behind your lovely head. Um, have you ever traveled as research for your book?
Yeah, every book I've written, I have either lived there or been there,
Nice.
because I think you can kind of tell if somebody hasn't. Although no, maybe you can't. I don't know if you
Well,
can.
I know. I know in film you can tell when a director has had a
Oh,
sightseer
so
go out and
much.
figure, because this street does not connect with that one. How did they
Yeah,
turn the
yeah,
corner and they're there now?
yeah.
So
I for husbands, yeah. Although I have a friend who lives in Georgia who is a writer, and so I did kind of send him out to like research little areas.
oh yeah.
I just went, could you just go and video this street for me? And could you just go and find out if there is anything like this there, or anything I could kind of spin around it? Because it was like a little imaginary dusty bowl town. So, but yeah, I did go to LA for it. But yeah, I like to try and set my books where I have either lived before or I'm living now.
Right. All right. And finally, how do you celebrate when you finish a book?
I want to say it's with champagne. I want to say it's by going out, but it's probably Ambien and a very nice nap. I love sleeping. So much sleeping. It's just anything like that. But no, I kind of, because you never, when you finish a book, when you write the end on that first draft, you know that's only really the start of it. There's so much more work to do. And I only really know when a book's finished when I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth of seeing it. When I hate it with an intensity that is, I have to hate it as much as I'd hate somebody like Trump walking into my room. Once I reach that point, then I know it's finished, and I know I want to see it again. And then it gets really hard because then you have to promote the damn thing. But yeah,
right, yeah,
yeah, that becomes the harder work. But
right. Well,
usually
probably
there's a nice little gap between finishing it, hating it, and then being able to talk.
And then you have to go through, and it's not, you finish it, then you have to go to edits, and then you have to go to the galleys, and then you have to go, so it's like, is it done?
Yeah, because the next book, I've kind of finished a draft. I'm just finishing a second edit or third edit. And then it's going off to a developmental editor, and then it'll go to yet another editor, and then another editor, and then a proofreader, and eventually I will grow tired of it.
Yeah. Oh, could you please just leave now? Well, you made it through the list. Bravo.
Mm-hmm. And you have teased the next book twice now. What about it? What can you share without spoiling it?
It is going to be, it's inspired by the idea of a Netflix idea where you always get a limited series where you have 6 episodes or 8 episodes, 6 episodes. This one has got 6 chapters, each one of which is an episode, each one of which focuses on one story. There are 3 characters, so there's 2 chapters for each. And each one is completed as it stands, but links into the next one, into the next one, into the next one. And then they all finish with that. And it may well be the first time I've attempted a series, because I kind of feel, having written the first one, that there's quite easily enough characters and enough mileage in the characters and other characters to write again something else. And it's so much easier to write that way as well, I found this way, because whenever I start trying an idea out, I always write 10,000, 15,000 words and hit a wall. And I think a lot of us do that because we kind of trying it out. We're like, yeah, that's the best thing I've ever written. Hit that 15,000 word wall. And then we think, now I need to think what happens after that. But this has been like writing 15,000 words, but linking them together and making them all into one big story. So it's a Netflix limited series, but that's
book form.
Yeah, in book form.
Nice. Do you have a tentative release date? I know we're not going to hold you to it.
Yeah, because of, as you say, that there is all of the editing, there's all of the galleys, there's all of the, print magazines now need to see things 6 months ahead of publication to even think about featuring it. So it kind of has to be finished and ready and edited and cover designed, everything ready by December, for it to come out tentatively in June next year.
Okay.
It is that far ahead. I'm just reaching the end of what I'm hoping is my final edit before somebody else edits it. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a way off. Yeah.
Well, are you doing any more promotions or interviews for Husbands that you want people to know the dates for?
No, Husbands is kind of, it came out in June, and I'm now enjoying a bit of a rest from, it's been quite intense. There's been book signings, there's been all kinds of things which involve interaction with people, which is a bit weird when you've been locked away in a room for a long while. And so Husbands is going to have another big push again when it comes towards the Christmas run. But at the moment, I'm pushing some of my back catalogue at the moment, just trying to hint at that a little bit, just to kind of get my head out of the Husbands world and into the next world.
Right. Well, I know you have a website. Is that the best place for people to follow what you're doing and what's coming next?
It is. And you'll also find information. The next book is going to be called Rainbows and Lollipops. I'm pretty much certain that's what it's going to be called, unless, of course, somebody tells me otherwise, because that can happen. But there's information about that. You can buy my books there. You can find links to buy my books at independent bookstores or at Big Bad Amazon, wherever you want to buy your book from.
Yep, and that's mofanning.co.uk.
That is.
And I noticed that also that all of your social links are across the bottom, so people can follow you on their favorite social site.
They can. I'm kind of not using X at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm
I
there.
don't think anybody
I have a
is.
following. And I'm kind of like with X. I'm like, I have a following, and at some point he's going to get bored of owning this, and somebody's going to take it off him, or he's going to have to sell it.
Well, I think the banks might. I just saw a video on
or
YouTube.
the bank might go. That's
because
actually out.
they're 13 billion in the hole with him.
Yeah, so I'm like, I don't want to delete it, but I also don't want to actively
use it
or add content into it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's there, but yeah.
All right. Fair
I'm
enough.
on most socials.
Right.
Anything to try and pass time. Right.
Any final words of wisdom?
I don't have words of wisdom. I just have garble. I just talk.
I love it. Well, you have a lot to say, and it's been very good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Mofanning,
so
for
much for
joining
having
us
me.
today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. The show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye now.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.